الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, today we will be discussing a topic or an allegation that has been made by the Christian missionaries that the Quran somehow asserts that the sun sets in a pool of murky water. And this is a claim they make to undermine the miraculous nature of the Quran. And so inshallah, we're going to ask the question: does the sun set in the pool of murky water according to Islamic sources? And inshallah, we're going to analyze these claims and the evidence they use to assert this. The first piece of evidence they use is from Surah Al-Kahf, chapter number 18, verse number 86. And the verse reads, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة. Let's have a look at some of the translations of this verse, verse 86 of Surah Al-Kahf. In the translation by Muhsin Khan, the translation is, until when he reached the setting place of the sun, he found it setting in a spring of black, muddy or hot water. The translation by Abdullah Yusuf Ali, until when he reached the setting of the sun, he found it set in a spring of murky water. Translation by Sahih International, until when he reached the setting of the sun, he found it as if setting in a spring of dark mud. And the translation and commentary by Abdul Majid Daryabadi, until when he reached the setting place of the sun, he perceived it setting in a miry spring. And finally, the recent translation by M.A.S. Abdul Halim. The translation reads, he traveled on a certain road, then when he came to the setting of the sun, he found it seemed to be setting into a muddy spring. Now, after reading the translation, one can see that the Quran is not asserting that the sun in fact sets in a pool of murky water. Rather, it is talking about the perception of the Qur'an. It is talking about his viewpoint of what he saw when he reached the place. But to prove this, inshallah, we'll have a look at some of the dictionaries and some of the words that we are interested in, and we're going to linguistically analyze this claim, inshallah. The important words in the verse that we're going to look at are Maghrib, Wajada. So what is the meaning of Maghrib? Maghrib is a word commonly used to say west or sunset. According to Al-Mu'jam Al-Wasit, an Arabic dictionary, Maghrib means, number 1, place of sunset, meaning the west. Number 2, time of sunset. Number 3, point of sunset. And number 4, countries located in North Africa and the west of Egypt. And number 5, Morocco. According to the vocabulary of the Holy Quran, page number 447, Maghrib means the place of setting sun, i.e. west. According to the Arabic English Dictionary of Quranic usage, page 661, Gharb is sunset, the west, and place, time of sunset. According to Al-Mawrid, Arabic to English Dictionary, page 1077, Maghrib is sunset, sundown, time of sunset, place of sunset, i.e. west. According to Hansware Arabic to English Dictionary, 3rd edition, page 669, Maghrib means place or time of sunset, west, prayer time, prayer at sunset, or Northwest Africa and Morocco. Also, another important point to notice is that the word used in this verse is Maghrib al-Shams, and the author Hansware defines Maghrib al-Shams as the time of sunset or sunset. Maghrib is used in other verses of the Quran where the word does indeed mean west, such as Rabbul Mashriqi wal Maghrib in chapter 26 verse number 28, which means Lord of the East and the West. So according to the dictionaries we have seen, and the name of these and the references will be mentioned in the description, Maghrib means place of sunset, meaning west. Number 2, time of sunset, and sunset and place of sunset. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says until when he reached the setting of the sun, it can either mean he reached the time of sunset, or Dhul Qarnayn reached the western part of his empire where there was no longer any land. Now what is the meaning of the second word we're interested in, wajada? Wajada can mean to find, to perceive, to see, to discover, to experience. According to Mini English to Arabic and Arabic English Dictionary by Ghali, page 340, wajada means to find. According to Al-Mawrid, Arabic to English Dictionary, page 1223, wajada means to find out, discover, to find. According to Hansware, Arabic to English Dictionary, 3rd edition, page 1049, it means to find. According to a dictionary and glossary of the Quran by John Penrice, it means to find, to perceive. According to Anthony Salmone in an Advanced Learner's Arabic to English Dictionary, wajada means found or met with, came upon, and perceived. According to the Arabic English Dictionary by J.G. Hava, page 884, it means to find, to obtain, to perceive, or to know by experience. According to the Dictionary of the Holy Quran, wajada means he found, and he also writes found in the sense of knew by experience, and he lighted on it, he attained it, he discovered it, he perceived it, he experienced it. According to the Arabic English Dictionary of Quranic Usage, page 1012, wajada means affluence, to find, to perceive, to experience. The author says about the verse in question, he says, to discover. حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة. He says to discover. According to Edward William Lane's Arabic, the English Lexicon, page 2924, he says he found it, lighted on it, attained it, obtained it by searching or seeking, discovered it, perceived it, saw it, experienced it. He further writes, Edward William Lane, he says, Wujud is of several kinds. It is the finding by means of any one of the 5 senses. Also, according to the authoritative lexicon of Quranic terms, Mufradat al-Quran of Raghib Isfahani, perceiving something using one of the 5 senses. So according to the dictionaries we've mentioned, and the references will be in the link in the description below, wajada means to find, to discover, to perceive, to see, to experience, and finding by means of any one of the 5 senses. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says wajada, it can mean he found, discovered, perceived. This means it is from Dhul Qarnayn's perspective where he saw or perceived the sun setting in murky water. This can be easily seen when one travels to a shore whilst it is a sunset, and he will find it setting in the sea. It is about perception, about viewpoint, and not that in fact the sun set in a pool of murky water. Now, to destroy the argument completely, let's have a look at some of the authoritative exegesis of the Quran, the tafsirs of the Quran. When we read Tafsir Ibn Kathir, Ibn Kathir writes, in explaining the verse, he says, until when he reached the setting place of the sun, means he followed a route until he reached the furthest point that could be reached in the direction of the sun's setting, which is the west of the earth. As for the idea of his reaching the place in the sky where the sun sets, this is something impossible, and the tales told by the storytellers that he traveled so far to the west that the sun set behind him are not true at all. Most of these stories come from the myths of the people of the book and the fabrications and lies of their heretics. He found its setting in a spring, meaning he saw the sun as if it were setting in the ocean. This is something which everyone who goes to the coast can see. It looks as if the sun is setting into the sea, but in fact it never leaves its path in which it is fixed. Ibn Kathir, according to Tafsir Jalalain, until when he reached the setting of the sun, the place where it sets, he found it setting in a muddy spring. Its setting in a spring is described as seen from the perspective of the eye, for otherwise it is far larger in size than this world. And he found it, that is the spring, a folk of disbelievers, we said, and it continues. According to the tafsir of Al-Baydawi, he probably reached shore of the ocean and saw it like that, because there was but water at the furthest of his sight. That's why he says he found it set, and he does not say it sets. According to Al-Qutaybi, Ibn Qutayba, the famous scholar of the Arabic language, it is permissible for the verse to mean from the perspective of the eye. And the tafsir of Sa'di, it says, till he saw the sun from the perspective of the eye, as if it was setting in murky water. So it is clear from how the Islamic scholars understood the verse, and it's clear after the linguistic analysis that the verse is not saying that in fact the sun sets in a pool of murky water. Rather, it is telling us about the perception of Dhul-Qarnayn, that when he went there, his perception, his viewpoint, that at the time the sun was setting. That is what the verse means. Now, the second evidence that the Christian missionaries use is that they quote a hadith from Sunan Abu Dawud 3991. First, let's make a clear mention that Sunan Abu Dawud is one of the trusted hadith sources of Muslims. However, it is clear that Sunan Abu Dawud contains both authentic and inauthentic narrations. So with Bukhari and Muslim, we are sure that all the narrations in there are, inshallah, according to the consensus of the Ummah, they are authentic. But when it comes to the other four Sunans, such as Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan al-Nisa'i, Sunan Ibn Majah, and Jami' al-Tirmidhi, we know that there are some inauthentic hadith, and in some cases many inauthentic hadith. And so we're going to analyze this hadith of Sunan Abu Dawud, hadith number 3991, and the narration goes by as narrated by Abu Dharr radiyallahu anhu. I was sitting behind the apostle of Allah, who was riding a donkey while the sun was setting. He asked, "Do you know where this sets?" I replied, "Allah and His apostle know best." He said, "It sets in a spring of warm water." Now, this has a long chain of narrators, such as Yazid ibn Harun, Sufyan ibn Hussein, Al-Hakam ibn Utayba, Ibrahim bin At-Taymi, etc. A related narration is found in Musnad Ahmad. These words are part of a longer narration report to same chain of narrators. Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu narrated, once I was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ riding a donkey on which there was a saddle or a piece of velvet. That was at sunset. He said to me, "O Abu Dharr, do you know where this sun sets?" I said, "Allah and His Messenger know better." He said, "It sets in a spring of murky water. Then it goes and prostrates before its Lord, the exalted in might and the ever majestic under the throne, and when it is time to go out, Allah allows it to go out, and thus it rises. But when He wants to make it rise where it sets, He locks it up. The sun will then say, 'Oh my Lord, I have a long distance to run,'" and the hadith continues. The narration is quite similar to the narration found in many hadith works including Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, except the words "it sets in a spring of warm water" are not there in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. In Sahih al-Bukhari it goes as Sufyan al-Thawri, Al-Amash Ibrahim al-Taymi, Yazid al-Taymi narrated, Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu said, "The Prophet asked me at sunset, 'Do you know where the sun goes?' I replied, 'Allah and His Messenger know better.' He said, 'It goes till it prostrates itself underneath the throne and takes the permission to rise again, and it is permitted, and then a time will come when it will be about to prostrate itself, but its prostration will not be accepted, and it will ask permission to go on its course, but it will not be permitted, but it will be ordered to return whence it has come, and so it will rise in the west.' And that is the interpretation of the statement of Allah, and the sun is quickly proceeding towards destination. This is the designing of the Almighty, the All-Knowing." This is in Sahih al-Bukhari. The significant difference is of the words "it sets in a spring of warm, murky water." Let's analyze the chain of narrators. From Abu Dharr, in both ways, i.e. with and without the words under consideration, it is narrated by Yazid al-Taymi, and from him by his son Ibrahim bin Yazid al-Taymi. From Ibrahim it is narrated by 6 different narrators: Al-Amash, Yunus ibn Ubayd, Musa ibn al-Thaqafi, Abu al-Ala al-Taymi, Harun ibn Sa'ad, Al-Hakam bin Utaybah. One of these various routes from Ibrahim bin Yazid al-Taymi, of all these various routes from Ibrahim bin Yazid al-Taymi, it is only through Al-Hakam ibn Utaybah that these words "it sets in a spring of warm water" are narrated. In short, there are 6 narrators reporting the hadith from Ibrahim ibn Yazid, and only one of them, Al-Hakam ibn Utaybah, quotes the particular words. And to add to the trouble, there is again only one narrator down from him, and he is Sufyan ibn Hussein, whereas parallel to Sufyan there are at least 7 people narrating the hadith without these words on the authority of 5 different people narrating from Ibrahim bin Yazid. So after analyzing the chain, we can say that this narration is shadh or anomalous, and mu'allal is defective. This fact alone is enough to make the narration dubious. No doubt both Al-Hakam and Sufyan are trustworthy narrators, but because on their respective levels they go against much reliable and numerous narrators, such a narration reported this way is termed as shadh. Another important fact to note is that Al-Hakam ibn Utaybah was a known mudallis, as in that he used vague wording when he narrated hadith sometimes. So, and this is mentioned by Ibn Hibban. He said he used to engage in tadlis. None of those who narrated this hadith said that he clearly stated that he heard it from previous narrator. Rather, they all said that this report included the word "an" instead of "sami'tu," meaning from instead of "I heard." Ibn Hajar also mentioned him in Maratib al-Mudallisin, meaning those who used vague wordings, who are the ones whose tadlis, vague wordings, the Imams tolerated, and from whom they narrated reports that they regarded as sound because of their prominence and because they rarely engaged in tadlis compared to others. So even though these narrators are authentic, they are trustworthy narrators, sometimes, as we have seen, they use vague wordings in the hadith. Another fact to be noted is that Bukhari and Muslim narrated a different version, whereas the other version with the words "it says in a spring of murky water" was not narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. And so, because they thought the first version was more, they thought that the version without "it says in the spring of murky water" is more correct. Undoubtedly, the reports in the book of Bukhari and Muslim take precedence than other books and Muslims. So it is clear that this narration, that it has a defect in the chain, meaning that it is shadh in cases, and it is mu'allal. And the evidence for that is of the book of Ibn Salah, in an introduction to the science of hadith. He says the shadh hadith, the anomalous hadith, is the one which a reliable transmitter relates and which is in conflict with what other people relate. Also, in the definition of mu'allal or defective hadith given by Ibn Salah, he says a defective hadith is one in which a defect impugning its soundness is detected, although it outwardly appears to be free of defect. That may apply to an isnad made up of reliable transmitters which outwardly seem to fulfill the condition of soundness. Someone being alone in transmitting the hadith as well as others contradicting him aid in catching the defect. So it is clear that this hadith cannot be used as evidence to say that the Islamic sources assert that the sun sets in a pool of murky water, because it is unreliable. So to summarize what we've learned, number one, the verse of the Quran, Surah Al-Kahf, that it does not say that the sun sets in a pool of murky water, rather it is talking about the perception of Dhul Qarnayn. And the hadith of Sunan Abu Dawood can be graded as shadh, isolated or anomalous, and mu'allal, defective. Hence it cannot be used as evidence for this. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.